Okay, thank you, Sue. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining this session in which we are going to talk about why we have changed our way of analyzing the strength and positioning of brands in our company and how we have made it. In recent years, it has been quite common for our clients to summarize their strategy or their objectives meetings in these kind of terms. Well, you know, what I really want is to be the Apple of my category. You can replace Apple with Lego or Tesla or some other brand, but Apple was a frequent example. Because although Apple has never been the leading brand in Spain, many brands want to be as attractive, desirable, and aspirational as it is. But now, the concern is not how to be the Apple of my category, but what I will do when Apple decides to enter my category. And if it's not Apple, it will be Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, or Dyson going from making vacuum cleaners to producing electric cars, when no car brand would ever have thought that it could be a competitor. For this reason, it's very important not to lose sight of any brand that will potentially break into my market. And we realized that traditional brand image studies were not suitable to help our clients and brands in this situation. That's why we changed our approach to brand positioning, to go beyond the traditional maps that represent the consumer perception of the brand in a certain category, and now we measure the strength of a brand in a broader context. So we not only compare ourselves with our direct competitors, but also with brands from other categories. Only then can we be prepared for this new ecosystem and to survive those disruptive companies that shake markets, dictate the rules, and redraw entire sectors. And for this case that I'm presenting today, we decided, we decided to analyze 100 brands, those brands with the highest advertising investment from 14 different sectors. With this list of brands, we conducted 10,000 interviews among consumers, a very robust sample that valued those brands in 4 KPIs and 50 image attributes that define 5 great brand values. Well, this is consumer research. We didn't want to focus on the monetary value of the brands or the stock exchange capitalization or other indicators of this type. We wanted to focus on consumer perception as the basis of our analysis. And we analyzed brand from 3 perspectives: brand positioning, or where we are compared to the rest of the brands; brand identity, the things that define me as a brand that make me unique and different; and brand drivers. What should I do to move my brand from where it is now to any other place on the map? Brand positioning is based on 4 indicators. The first one is familiarity. How well do consumers know the brand? In this project, we work with familiarity instead of awareness because there are some studies that show that familiarity correlates better with market share, that it reduces the cognitive effort when facing a new purchase decision. It also increases the ability to assimilate new information about the product, and very important for an agency like us, it makes us less receptive to the advertising of other brands. The second indicator is perception. This is the positive or negative opinion that consumers have about the brand and the product. Then we have relevance. If the brand is important for consumers for any reason, if it covers a particular need, but if it would affect them especially if the brand disappears. And the last one is recommendation. To what extent would they recommend the brand to friends and families? And combining these 4 indicators, we create the 2 dimensions that define our map of brands. The vertical axis represents the strength of the consumer's relationship with the brand, and the horizontal axis represents the prevalence of the brand among the population. All these points there in the chart are the 100 brands that we have analyzed. Each color represents a sector. We are not going to see all the brands, but some interesting cases. And this way, we can trace the root of each sector and see, for example, the automotive industry that we have here. Here we have brands scattered all over the map. From the left side, where we can find those well-known brands that are penalized by a lower relevance or lower prevalence. Examples in the Spanish market will be Dacia or Skoda. Then we move to the center of the map, where we find brands with average values, like Nissan, for example. And then to the right part of the map, where we have those brands with an aspirational profile, separated from the rest, thanks to being a highly valued and highly recommended brand. An example here will be Audi. Or we can see that we have a very different situation with these blue dots. There are, as you can see, a few brands on the left that are quite close to each other, but then we have 3 other brands placed at the other side of the map. How can a sector have such different and separate brands? Well, this corresponds to the gaming and betting sector. On the left side, we have all those online gaming, poker, sport betting sites, and at the other end of the map, with a completely different positioning, we have several national lotteries that, thanks to their history, tradition, the social work that they do, they get very high values in both relationship and prevalence. But we can also use this map in a different way and zoom in an area of the map to do a cross-category analysis and see if the brands that appear in that area have something in common, if there is any sector that is predominant, if they are local or global brands, and so on. And since I have started talking about Apple at the beginning of the presentation, we can look for this brand. And as you can see, there it is near the center of the map. It's not at the top right corner, as we may think, it's in the center of the map. And close to Apple, we have some beer brands, we have Nissan, we have food, drinks, Schweppes, personal care, Head and Shoulders, L'Oreal, Garnier, we have Dodot, and we have companies like Vodafone or MediaMarkt. This doesn't mean that all these brands have exactly the same values as Apple. What it means is that the relative position of each of these brands within their respective sector is similar to Apple's positioning in its own category. The second part of the analysis is brand identity. This is another perspective of the analysis that gives us a deeper knowledge about how consumers perceive brands. As we are comparing very different types of products, we don't ask about attributes as specific as they can be when we are doing a traditional brand image study for a particular sector. What we have here is a list of 50 attributes that could be applied to any brand of any sector. These 50 attributes are grouped into 5 values that define the brand's identity. We have the emotional values, we have functional values, those attributes that have more to do with the characteristics of the product or service and are related to how the quality and value of the brand is perceived. Great service, high quality, good value for money, it's worth paying more for the brand. Then we have communication attributes. If the brand has a strong and notorious communication, if it's open to dialogue. Corporate values, or how the company behind the brand is valued, if it has a positive impact on society, if it represents values that I like. And then we have the presence values. If the brand is part of the consumer's day-to-day, if it's present and easy to find. We are going to look at the first one of those values, the emotional ones. This is related to how consumers use brands to convey their own personal and social identity. For example, with aspects like the brand fits with my way of being, it has a good image among my family, it's part of my culture or my identity. And as you know, nowadays, the mobile phone is considered a necessity. It is an extension of ourselves, and it also defines who we are. And that's why it is the first sector to appear strongly linked to emotional attributes. As you can see, mobile is followed by food, retail, drinks, and automotive. Once we have detected if our brand needs to improve the prevalence or the relationship, we must determine in which KPI we want to focus. And to do so, we identify the most relevant attributes to improve its variables. Those attributes that correlate better with the KPI that we want to move. That can be recommendation, relevance, perception, or familiarity. Knowing the direction in which we want to move our brand, we can decide where to focus our marketing efforts. And the drivers will be different for each KPI. In this example, we wanted to influence their recommendation. Behind those circles, we have the 50 image attributes that I mentioned before, grouped by the value that they represent. And we can learn that having heard about the brand from friends and family is the most influential factor to drive recommendation. But it is also important that the brand is easy to find in the supermarket, in the day-to-day of the consumers. Sorry, here. Or to be perceived positively in their families. The sense of belonging, thinking that they have a lot in common with other users of the brand is also key. And very interesting, consumers recommend those brands that they would like to work for. This way, although we could think that the recommendation depends mainly on aspects related to the product and the price, sorry, I want to go back here. If I have a good product at a good price, people will recommend it. Now we can see that among the 5 aspects that strongly correlate with the recommendation, we have a mix of communication, presence, emotional, and corporate attributes. In addition to this, we cannot ignore the fact that other brands cannot be already strongly associated with some attributes. And we can analyze which brands are better positioned in each one of them to check if we are already present in that ranking, if we are the only brand of our sector there, or who is the #1 brand in that list. Here we have the top 10 brands that consumers want to work for, that, as we have just seen, is important to drive recommendation. We have local brands and global brands. We have technology brands, car makes, retailers, FMCG companies. And regardless of our sector of activity, we can learn from these brands to improve ourselves in that aspect. We can find things that they have done that could be imported to our own sector to do something really disruptive. Or we can decide that this value is already crowded with many strong brands that are the owners of this attribute, and that it could be more effective to explore others. To sum up, with this project, we wanted to have a multi-sector, cross-category analysis that went beyond just having a series of rankings. We wanted the project to enable us to draw a strategic path for the brand, starting by learning where we are, understanding who we are as brands, and finally, making informed decisions about what to do to grow and to reinforce our position in this ocean of brands. Thank you.